Yo, what's going on? Kofuzi here, and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes on YouTube. And something I've been doing in my review videos lately is I've been zooming out to see where the shoe I'm reviewing fits within the broader lineup of that brand. Now, it's been a while since I reviewed a Nike shoe, so I haven't been able to do that kind of overview of the lineup. So I thought it was time, especially because Nike is going to be changing not only the way they categorize their shoes, but also changing names of some shoes going forward as well. So I thought it'd be a really time to go over what they have and what each of those shoes does. But before I can review and explain a shoe, I've got to be able to run in it. And there's a total of 11 shoes that I think are going to be really relevant for this discussion. I have 3 of them, so I got a bunch of shoes that I'm gonna need to buy. And that's where the sponsor for today's video comes in really handy.
I'll be using Klarna to help spread out the cost of acquiring all these shoes. Klarna is a partner at a lot of the brands and retailers that you already use. And instead of having to pay for everything all at once or put it on your credit card, you can split the amount into 4 interest-free payments that will automatically be deducted every 2 weeks. So you're not paying any extra, but you could spread the costs over about a month and a half. Now, these are the shoes that I already had from Nike, so I didn't have to go out and buy these, but the rest of the shoes I did have to use Klarna to go out and buy. I got this pair of shoes from JD Sports. This pair of shoes came from Foot Locker. This pair of shoes, these 2 came from Nike.com. And these also came from Nike.com. And these 11 shoes are the shoes that we're going to be going over today. But first, before I could tell you about the shoes, I gotta run in them. Now, whenever I'm taking a look at a brand, I always like to start with the Daily Trainer because I feel like that's the shoe that should give you the best indication of what a brand is all about. And the Daily Trainer from Nike is the Pegasus. This is version 41. The shoe has been around for a really long time. And this year, the Pegasus brings us React X foam, which my understanding is that there's rubberized EVA and 2 Air Zoom units, 1 little pocket of Air Zoom in the forefoot and 1 in the heel. And Air Zoom is an iteration or a variant of Nike's Air technology that's been very popular in both the Pegasus line and, as we'll see, in a lot of other Nike running shoes. The fit of the upper this year is really nice. It's probably one of the better fitting uppers that I've experienced in a Pegasus in a while. It is a little bit on the puffy side, but it's a Daily Trainer, so you do want a little bit of comfort and you do want a little bit of durability. That's definitely built in here with the ample amount of rubber that's on the outsole on the bottom. Now, this is a shoe that I find to be a little bit underwhelming. I find the React X to be a little bit too firm. It also kind of muddles the sensation of the Air Zoom. I kind of can't even feel that they're in there. And right now, it just makes the shoe feel kind of blah, a little bit on the generic side. It is a decent running shoe. I don't think it really lives up to the Pegasus name in my mind. So while it's not a shoe that I would really recommend for high mileage marathoners who want something that's a little bit more cushioned and dynamic, I do feel like this is a really great shoe if you're just looking for a shoe that's going to be dependable, that you can use a few times per week. I think this is going to be a great option. Or if you're one of those younger runners that's running in junior high school or high school and you need one running shoe that can take you from cross country through the track season, this is probably a pretty solid option to take you through both the grass running that you might be doing during cross country season and even onto the track as you're doing some training. The Pegasus comes in at $140, which I feel like is the right price for a shoe kind of in this category, in this class, but I feel like for what you're getting in the Pegasus, it's a little bit on the expensive side. I'd have you also take a look at the Puma Velocity Nitro 3 or the Adidas Adizero SL2 if you're looking for shoes that are kind of like the Pegasus, but can deliver a little bit more bang for your buck. Now, for days where the Daily Trainer, the kind of shoe that you would take for most of your days, for most of your runs, if you want something that's a little bit more cushion than that, then Nike has a max cushion offering, and that's the Vomero. Now, the thing that I've said about the Vomero for years is that it wasn't really a max cushion shoe. I felt like Nike really wasn't committing to it. A lot of times I felt like what we were getting with the Vomero was like a Grand Touring version of the Pegasus. So it was like more of like a Pegasus GT. It was like a Pegasus, but fancier. And I particularly like that feeling with the Vomero 16 was probably my favorite Vomero, where it had a really nice combination of ZoomX, which is one of Nike's premier racing caliber foams, and it had air zoom in it as well. This year for the Vomero 18, what we have is a combination of ZoomX and ReactX foam, and there isn't any air zoom unit in the shoe anymore, so it's just a dual foam system. And Nike's finally committing to that max cushion label by putting max cushioning right here on the insole. And the ride that we have here definitely is a max cushion feeling shoe. It feels like it's much more cushioned than the Pegasus, especially in the heel. It feels like there's like a giant, almost like donut of foam that your heel gets to land on. And then as you're transitioning to the forefoot, it gets a little bit more firm, a little bit more responsive, but there's still plenty of cushion in the forefoot that feels really nice. The materials up top are very comfy and plush. There's a stretchy, puffy layer of mesh on the forefoot, a very puffy padded tongue. Too puffy, but I know that's how a lot of max cushion shoes go. They like being too puffy. And then a bunch of padding all through the heel cup. The one thing that I do really appreciate about the Vomero 18 is that there's two foams in here, and Nike is labeling which of the two layers is ZoomX and which layer is ReactX. A lot of the other times, and even in this shoe, Nike will put the word ZoomX where it's convenient or maybe aesthetically pleasing, although here they're writing the word ZoomX on a portion of the foam that's actually ReactX foam. To clear that all up, they've got some labels on the back. So I really like that. I really enjoyed running in this shoe quite a bit. It was a change from what the Vomero has been, but I like the direction that this Vomero is going. Now, the Vomero 18 comes in at a price of $150, and I feel like that's a pretty good price. Some alternatives to consider though would be the Under Armour Infinite Elite 2, or if you're looking for kind of what the Vomero used to be a little bit more like, you're looking for that more cushioned daily trainer, I would take a look at the Mizuno Neo Zen. Now, these are the kind of the daily trainers, your everyday and your max cushion or your comfy day shoes. And let's talk about race day. And for racing, there is the recently released Vaporfly. This is version 4. I would say that this shoe has undergone yet another significant redesign from version 3. And it's still using ZoomX foam, and the ZoomX foam in here is really nice and lovely. Still also has a very aggressive plate position where it starts out high in the heel and then slams down towards the forefoot near the ground. But some unusual things to note here is that, at least on my shoe, the plate is wider than the arch in terms of the amount of foam, and you can kind of see it on this medial side. The heel drop this year changes from 8mm to 6mm. And the other thing that I've noticed is that this shoe reminds me a lot more of the kind of, I guess original is not the right word for it, even though this does say original super shoe on it. The original or the first Vaporfly Next Percent. Now, a lot of people forget that the first Vaporfly was the Vaporfly 4%, and then there was 4% Flyknit. Then the third Vaporfly was the Vaporfly Next. Then we had Next Percent 2. Then just Vaporfly 3, even though that was the fifth one. And now Vaporfly 04, which is the sixth Vaporfly shoe. And I guess it could still carry that title of the original super shoe because it has the Vaporfly name to it. But this really reminds me more of the Vaporfly Next Percent, whereas last year's Vaporfly 3 reminded me more of the Vaporfly 4%. So those of you who are familiar with those shoes, I think can understand a little bit of the differences between the two shoes just by making those comparisons. I think the ZoomX is really nice in this shoe, and I've been enjoying my time in the Vaporfly 04, even though it's technically number 6. This shoe comes in at $260, but if that price is throwing you off, some other shoes that you could take a look at would be the Metaspeed Edge Paris or the Deviate Nitro Elite 3. That shoe is only $230. Now, in between the race day shoe and the daily trainer is something called like the tempo shoe or the workout shoe. It has some race day like features and some durability built in like a daily trainer. And from Nike, that is the Zoomfly. This is Zoomfly version 6. In this version, it gets ReactX and a top layer of ZoomX foam. And this is again one of those shoes where they put the word ZoomX on the material that's not ZoomX in the shoe, but we know that the ZoomX is on top, and you can tell just by looking at it that it's a much more creaseable or crinkly type of material, and it's when you touch it, it feels lighter and a lot less dense than the React X that's underneath it. And in between the two layers of foam, there is a carbon fiber plate. And this position of this carbon fiber plate, again, is in that aggressive position where it starts out high in the back of the shoe and then kind of slams down very close to the ground in the forefoot. But there is a lot more durability built into it and comfort built into it as well. There's a lot more padding around the heel cup back here and on this Achilles flare. And it's a little bit more roomy than the race day options are. So that makes sense for a shoe that you're gonna be spending a little bit more time in. And there is a lot of rubber on this shoe, relatively speaking, for a shoe that's meant to be running fast a lot of the time. Now, this shoe can definitely do workouts, and so it can serve as that kind of training companion to your race day shoe. But it also has really good road manners, and I feel like it's one of those shoes that can go fast when it needs to, but also does a really good job of doing some easy paces and some daily training type of work. So if it's a workout where you're doing some fast running and some easier running, maybe you're doing some fartlek type of work, or you're doing some faster work with some float kilometers or float miles in there, I feel like the Zoomfly 6 is actually going to be a really good option. And I think for a lot of you guys, you can be using this as a daily trainer as well, kind of like people would use the Endorphin Speed 4. And this shoe comes in at a price of $170, which I feel like is a pretty good price for this kind of shoe. I'd love to see it at that $160 price point for shoes in the tempo shoe category, but this is one of the best Zoomflies that I've tested in a long time, the one that I've enjoyed most, probably since Zoomfly Flyknit. And so I'm really enjoying this one. I think they've done a fantastic job with the updates to this one. And I think that a lot of you guys are really going to enjoy what's going on in the Zoomfly 6. If you want to look at some alternatives, some shoes that I'd have you look at would probably be the Endorphin Speed 4 or the Asics Magic Speed 4. Now, this is a pretty good lineup here, but I think there's a fifth shoe that we can add in here. Not every brand has a fifth shoe to add at the end of this lineup, but Nike is one of those brands that do. And for me, that's going to be the Invincible. This is the Invincible Run 3. It has a full stack of ZoomX foam, although as we're kind of seeing through all these shoes, not all ZoomX is exactly the same. It gets tweaked a little bit depending on the kind of shoe that you're putting it in. And this shoe is what I would call a long run shoe. It's got a really large amount of stack height and it's built to be kind of a daily trainer. So it's comfortable and it's got some durability built into the upper. But this shoe for me doesn't love to run just kind of low and slow all the time. For me, it kind of begs to be run a little bit faster. It likes those runs that are maybe a progression long run that you might have over the weekend that has a variety of paces, starting from kind of easy warm-up conversational pace all the way up to kind of like marathon pace. Those kinds of ranges of paces is where I feel like this shoe does really well. And so it's not really a max cushion shoe, but it is a shoe you can be in for a long time because it's comfortable, but it's light enough and it's energetic enough to be able to be run pretty fast. Now, there's a lot other shoes that I think that we need to still talk about. And that's where a lot of substitutions come in. Because I feel like for me, whether it's a 4 shoe rotation or a 5 shoe rotation, these are the main pillars in kind of any running shoe brand. These are the 5 types of running shoe that I recognize here on my channel. And so some substitutions that I think we could start talking about here are, number 1, in the stability category. We haven't talked about any stability shoes, and I don't really talk about stability shoes all that often on this channel because they disagree with me quite a bit. I notice when there's stability-like features even in neutral shoes, and they tend to bother me pretty much almost instantly, so I avoid running in stability shoes because I just don't like them. But Nike does have a couple, and it's going to be important to talk about them today, especially for the later part of the conversation where we start getting into Nike's reorg. But I think the most important stability shoe that Nike offers is the Structure, and this is kind of going to be a replacement for the Pegasus. It kind of is the daily trainer of stability shoes. And the way that the stability is used in this shoe is actually, I'd say, pretty light. I think in the forefoot, it's very flexible, very pleasant. I actually like the forefoot of this shoe more than I like the forefoot of the Pegasus. And the stability stuff comes in the back of the shoe. It's very locked down. There's not a lot of movement happening. There is like a guide rail on the medial side underneath the arch of your foot, and it all prevents the shoe from caving in too much as your foot hits the ground. And the way that they do that is by making this side just like a little bit harder to move through geometry. And sometimes with stability shoes, they might even just make that side of the shoe more firm. And that's kind of what I'm feeling. I'm feeling the shoe is like poking me and jamming up into my arch every time I hit it. So I don't love the back part of the shoe, but the front part of the shoe is pretty nice. And for a stability shoe, it actually twists pretty nicely. So I feel like as far as stability shoes go, I still don't love this, but it's not one of the most, I guess, offensive is not the right word, but it doesn't bother me as much as some other stability shoes do. And so that could be one area of replacement. And then there's kind of another layer of stability shoes that we have with Nike. And I think maybe what you could do is say it's kind of like a max cushion stability shoe. That maybe not be it, because stability isn't really about like daily training cushioning and max cushioning. It's more about like light stability versus heavy stability. So maybe it's not really so much a Vomero replacement, but maybe it's more about structure replacement. But in either event, this shoe is the Infinity Run version 4. It looks really comfortable. It looks like it's a wonderfully soft design. The midsole is made out of React X. The upper is this kind of chunky, almost like cable knit kind of material that looks very inviting and very touchably soft. And it is touchably soft, but overall running in the shoe, for me as someone who doesn't like stability shoes, it felt like I was running in an immobility or a mobility boot. What do they call those boots when you can't move your ankle? It feels like I was in a boot, like trying to run in an ice skate. I don't feel like I was having very much movement at all in the shoe, even though ostensibly it looks like it's a fairly twistable shoe. I just felt like everything was very just immobilized. And then when I look at the bottom of the shoe, it's not like flat down here. There's like different like little micro hills that are happening that to me I think are resulting in it feeling like there's like a giant bulb of very dense foam right here in the kind of stability area of a shoe, which makes sense. This is a moderate stability kind of shoe, or maybe a heavy stability kind of shoe. And the forefoot just felt like I couldn't do anything except kind of move my foot in this direction. My foot couldn't like move in any of the ways that my foot kind of naturally wants to move. And so it kind of felt like I wasn't getting a lot of movement or flex. I was just getting a lot of, here's the shoe, and I'd have to pick up my foot to get it into the next step. And so I didn't love this, but if you need your foot to be very, very controlled, I feel like this is a pretty good option because it does a lot of control. It felt to me very firm, which I feel like stability shoe lovers tend to enjoy. And the upper was nice, kept my foot really locked into place because these fibers, these knit material in the upper are very strong and they're not going to flex too much. So that's where the stability shoes kind of come into play. But the real substitutions that I think we really need to talk about are some of the alternatives to some of these shoes that are in here that I know that you guys are already very well familiar with. And the first one, I think the most glaring one that we could talk about is in the race shoe. There isn't just one race shoe that Nike offers. One race shoe that they do offer right now is the Streakfly version 2. This one also just came out, I think, at the same time as the Varpofly version 4. Now, this shoe is a very aggressive shoe, and I feel like most people watching this, you shouldn't be buying this shoe. Not because it's a bad shoe, because it's excellent at what it's intended for. It's intended for road miles, and they say up to the 10K, but I really think that what it really means, because this shoe is so aggressive, is that it's a 1 mile road racing shoe or a 10,000 meters on the track kind of shoe. The shoe has a carbon fiber plate and ZoomX foam in it, and it looks like it has a lot of ZoomX foam in it, and it probably does have a lot of ZoomX foam in it, but it feels like you're basically running on nothing. So it feels like you're very close to the ground. It feels like you're slammed to the ground, and the heel drop, whatever Nike lists as heel drop in, isn't really the heel drop because the shoe isn't meant to be like used from heel to toe in like that kind of sense. I feel like the shoe is meant to be only on the forefoot, kind of like a track spike is. And so the way that the plate is shaped, the way that the shoe shapes around your foot is all very aggressive and meant to be kept with the heel never touching the ground and pushing off from the forefoot. So that's an aggressive position to be in, and a position you don't really want to be in for very long. For me, I think I can handle for a road mile, maybe a road 5K. The ideal 10K application for it would be if you don't want to be in a pair of spikes for 10,000 meters on the track. I think this is a good option, although I'm not sure if it's compliant with the rules in terms of stack height for World Athletics sanctioned track races. So you'd have to check into that if that rule applies to you. But that's the kind of thing that I would use this for because it's such an aggressive shoe. The upper is super minimal and probably the most uncomfortable Nike upper I've ever been in, keeping in mind that I did race in high school and in college only in Nike spikes. This is far less comfortable and upper than any Nike spike I've ever been in. I don't know what's going on here on the lateral side of the toe box, but it's as if Nike doesn't believe that most of us have a fifth toe because it just cuts over and it's so straight, kind of from like the side of the foot, just straight up. There's no room for toes at all. So it's a really uncomfortable, aggressive shoe. If you can manage to run the entire distance of your race in the forefoot only position like this, and you can handle how aggressive this shoe is, I think you're going to have a really fun time. But for the most of us, this is not really an option that I would switch out for in any real road racing kind of sense. But if you are a track runner, high school or college track runner, I think this is probably a very exciting, interesting option that's finally made for a distance that you run. And if I've been successful in scaring you off from this shoe, you're gonna wanna know what are some of the alternatives if you are a 5K or 10K road racer. I think that probably the closest shoe to this one, and another one that I don't know that I would take for a full 10K on the road, would be from Saucony, the Saucony Sinister. It's a very low to the ground race flat in the traditional sense using Power Run PB. And no plate, no shank in it. So it's a very flexible, neutral shoe. That could be an alternative for you. But if you're looking for a road racer for your 5K and 10K, an alternative would be the Takumi Sen. Now, the main other alternative to the Vaporfly that I think a lot of you guys are aware of is the Alphafly version 3. This is the fastest shoe in the world by, I think, many accounts. It has the world record for the men and the women in the marathon. And it has ZoomX foam, similar to how the Vaporfly 4 has ZoomX foam, and the ZoomX that's in the Alphafly 3 is really quite nice. The upper is that knit material that I love for a race product. And it does have air zoom units, which are very different than the kind of air zoom units that we were talking about in the Pegasus. These are much bigger, they are a different shape, and they're used very differently than the air zoom units are used in the Pegasus. But these are part of what makes the Alphafly so unique and so much fun to be able to run in. This shoe comes in at $285, so it's getting very close to that $300 price point. That seems to be kind of like a red line for a lot of runners in 2025. But if you are willing to get to that $285, $300 price point, some other shoes that you could look at are the Puma Fast R3, or you can go down in price quite a bit to $250 and get to the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. And then the last substitution that I want to talk about is the Pegasus Plus, or the Pegasus Turbo. At least that's what it's called on the bottom of the shoe on the outsole. This is a shoe that uses ZoomX foam, or a version of ZoomX foam. So it's a higher caliber foam than, say, the React X. And it doesn't have any air zoom units. It's just ZoomX foam. And it's using an elevated upper in terms of the caliber of the materials that they're using, but it's still very much a daily trainer style of upper. And this would be, for me, a replacement of the Pegasus 41, because I feel like this does daily training really well, but it also can do some of the stuff that you might use a Zoomfly for, and it's also still comfy enough that you could use it for some of the stuff that you might use a Vomero 18 for. So it's a pretty versatile shoe, which is one of the main things that I'm looking for in a daily trainer. The other main thing that I'm looking for in a daily trainer is that it's really fun and exciting to run in, and the Pegasus Plus definitely delivers in that regard. The shoe comes in at $180 though, and that I think is just way too much for what you're getting in this shoe. It's been out for a little while, so I do think that you get it for a significant discount at this point. But if you are looking for some alternatives to this shoe, there are plenty out there. The number one that comes to mind would be the Adidas Evo SL, or from New Balance, the Rebel version 4, I think are also really fun and deliver very similar experiences to the Pegasus Plus. And so I think this is the 5 shoe lineup that I would really run in if I were to run in all Nike shoes. And I think from here, this is a good spot that we could start talking about the reorg that Nike is undergoing. And I think the rationale for the reorg basically is that the stock price was low, or that shareholders were upset. So I think that's the real motivation. And so what Nike has done in response to the stockholders being upset is that they've tried to make their lineup easier to understand. And as someone who's run in Nike shoes for a very long time, I already feel like I understand them well, and hopefully now you understand them really well too. But here's how Nike is going to reorganize their shoes. The reorg doesn't really affect the race product at all, so we could put that to the side. I don't know if they're going to give it its own separate org chart or what, but here's the org chart that Nike is planning to put it together. Now, there are three main pillars to the org chart. There is the Vomero, there is the Pegasus, and then there is the structure. So you've got stability, you've got just regular, and then you've got cushioning. And then within each of these pillars, there's going to be layers. And so there's going to be 9 total shoes in this new matrix. 2 of them still haven't been released yet, so we'll talk about 7 of them today. And so from the Vomero, we're going to have a Vomero Plus. And for that, it's going to be a shoe that is, I guess, more Vomero-y than the Vomero even is. And so rather than create a brand new shoe for that, right, Nike is going to be repurposing an existing shoe, and that's going to be the Invincible Run 4, I guess. So this Invincible 3 will be the last Invincible that exists, and the update to the Invincible will go into this Vomero silo over here. And so the Invincible 4 will be not the Invincible 4, it's going to be the Vomero Plus. And then from the structure, from the stability side of things, we're going to have the structure, and then the next version up from that is going to be plus. So the structure plus is going to be the update to the Infinity. So this was the Infinity RN4, and then the next Infinity is going to be not an Infinity, it's going to be the Structure Plus. And then from the Pegasus, we're going to have Pegasus and then Pegasus Plus, and that's where the Pegasus Plus comes in. And so this is a shoe that is basically the victim of this rebranding like halfway through production. And so I think what happened was they made the midsoles and the outsoles where it said Pegasus Turbo on here, and people were really excited, myself included, that we're finally getting the Pegasus Turbo back. But then I think this reorg was decided, and so then on the top they put on these little tags that say Pegasus Plus. So now we've got the Pegasus and we've got the Pegasus Plus. And then we've got another third layer that goes on top of this, one that's even moreness than the Plus layer, and that's the Premium. Now the Vomero Premium hasn't been announced yet. I mean, leaks are starting to happen, and the Structure Premium hasn't been announced yet, but the Pegasus Premium has. Now, that shoe has been really difficult for me to find. It's pretty much sold out everywhere. It's always pretty much sold out every time there's a restock, but this is another area where Klarna was really useful for me.
Now, the Pegasus Premium has been a really difficult shoe for me to find online. It's pretty much sold out everywhere in all the usual spaces, but that's where I reached for the Klarna app, where you can search across thousands of stores online and they will help you find places that have the shoe in stock. You can even find it at places like StockX or Stadium Goods. And that's interesting because StockX isn't even technically a partner of Klarna. And what I had to do to get this shoe was, I didn't have to go to StockX for it, thankfully, but I had to go to Nordstrom Rack, which isn't a Klarna partner, but Klarna lets you create one-time use credit cards. There is a little bit of a service charge. I had to pay $3 in order to be able to do it, but I was able to buy it at Nordstrom Rack. And now I'm here to pick it up in store. All right, thank you so much. Thank you too.
And so now we've got the final shoe that I needed to get. This is the Pegasus Premium. It's got pretty much everything that Nike has to offer. It's got a full length unit of Air Zoom. It's got React X foam on the bottom. It's got Zoom X foam on the top. It's got a daily training upper that looks super fancy, and it's full of speed holes to make you go faster. When I looked at this shoe, I thought this could either be fantastic or more likely it was going to be a Homer car. But as much as I didn't want to like this because it just felt like it was extra for the sake of being extra and not for the sake of comfort or performance or support or anything like that, but I actually found that I didn't hate this shoe. The front of the shoe felt really nice and cushioned, and I felt like the air zoom units were very noticeable and in a good way. It felt like a max cushion shoe to me, but a max cushion shoe for 4-foot strikers. And so a lot of times when you get a max cushion shoe, there's just a lot of max everywhere, and there's a lot of max everywhere on this shoe too. But you feel like there's a lot there for heel strikers and people that want to walk run in the shoe. And then there's also, I guess, a little bit of foam in the front too. Kind of what is happening in the Vomero 18. But I felt like in this shoe, there was just a ton of the goodness focused in the forefoot. And yes, it is comfortable for walking around, and there is still a lot there for heel strikers and midfoot strikers. But I felt like there was just a lot of attention here for the forefoot strikers out there like me. And so I found that this shoe was pretty fun to run in. Now, it is very heavy, and after a while, like the level and the way that this compresses, it felt very kind of like mechanical and not so fluid, but it felt good, but artificial in a way. I'm not sure if that even makes sense, but that I think is the best way that I could describe it. That started to kind of just wear on me after a while. And so this shoe isn't a disaster, but I don't really understand what the premium means. Does the premium means it goes into another level of cushion? So does like a premium daily trainer become a premium or a regular or a plus max cushion? I'm not really sure how these all kind of fit together, but just so you know, these are kind of the way that some of your favorite shoes are going to be rebranded, like the Infinity, the Invincible, and the Turbo, and some new shoes that are coming down. I would say expect something that no one asked for when you get to the premium levels of either the Pegasus, the Vomero, or the Structure. And so this is what's coming with Nike. Hopefully, having heard the way I explained how Nike shoes were organized, it helps you make sense of what they're trying to give us next. So those are my thoughts on Nike running as of May 2025. Let me know if you have any questions about these shoes or any of the other shoes that I talked about today. Or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?